Hey guys, haven't made a video in a very long time and I'm sorry. I know you've been fiending for more of my content, so here I am. Today we'll be talking about 3 reasons why the Giza pyramids and the Sphinx are much older than we think. But before I get to it, let's address the fact that we know very little about the story of mankind. Considering that writing was developed 5,500 years ago by the Sumerians, we only know 2% of the human story beginning from 3400 BC to now. For most of human history, humans lived alongside Neanderthals in Europe and parts of Asia, and none of that is recorded. And for most of human history in South America, humans lived alongside sloths the size of elephants called Megatherium, and none of that is recorded either. And what bothers me so much is the fact that Orthodox historians think they know the true origins of mankind, and that obviously is far from the truth. What isn't far from the truth, however, is the fact that the same historians who think they know everything about the story of mankind tend to be very dogmatic and unchanging on matters relating to archaeology, and the reason why that is because if you change one aspect of history, you obviously have to rewrite everything else. Like in 1996 in Washington, they found a Caucasian skull more than 9,000 years old, which archaeologists call the Kenwick Man. This is very puzzling considering that the first human beings were thought to have migrated from Asia across the Bering Bridge in the year 13,000 BC. Historians call that Clovis first theory, and it's truly shameful they teach it in schools, considering that archaeologists in the US unearth human fossils that date back to more than 100,000 years ago, and this happens on a yearly basis. Anyways, I don't want to get carried off, sorry about the rant. I just felt like addressing the dogma relating to history before covering today's topic. I can talk about this later in a separate video. So, 3 reasons why the pyramids and the Sphinx are far older than we think. Reason number 1 is the celestial alignment with the constellation of Orion. Bear with me, I'm gonna try to explain this as best as I can. The pyramids were built as sort of celestial clocks, mirroring the 3 bright stars in the constellation of Orion. Here's a picture of the 3 bright stars of Orion, and here's a satellite picture of the Giza pyramids. The 2 big pyramids are perfectly aligned in a straight line running northeast, and the smaller pyramid, the Pyramid of Menkaure, is deliberately offset to the south. Similarly, Al-Niham and Al-Nitak, the 2 big stars, are aligned in a straight line, while Menkaure, the smaller of the 3 stars, is positioned a bit lower. The reason why the ancient Egyptians did this is because they believed that after death, the human soul transmigrates across the galaxy, mazing its way through 12 stratas of the Duat, or the realm of the dead, where in the 5th strata it is judged by Osiris, who stands alongside Anubis, the god of the dead. If the soul passes the weighing of the heart, the weighing of words, and everything else, it reincarnates as an Osiris, or a star in the constellation of Orion, which is kind of like heaven. And with that being said, they build pyramids as portals to the afterlife, but here's what's strange. The 3 pyramids aren't perfectly aligned to the stars of Orion, which is weird, considering that the ancient Egyptians were masters at building terrestrial maps of constellations. However, once you understand the precision of the equinoxes, everything starts to make sense, but the pyramids become even more of an anomaly. So the precision of the equinoxes is a bit hard to understand, but I'm going to try my best to make this as simple as I can. If you go outside and you raise your forefinger up against a star, let us use Sirius for example, which is in the constellation of Orion. If you position your forefinger up directly to the left of Sirius, and then 72 years later you stand in the same exact spot on the ground and position your forefinger in the same exact spot in the sky, Sirius would no longer be to the right of your forefinger, it would now be directly to the left. Every 72 years, the position of all the stars in the night sky shifts by 1 degree, or the width of the forefinger. This happens because of Earth's wobble, which is caused by the gravitational influences of the sun and the moon. And now that you understand the precision of the equinoxes, let's get back to the pyramids. As I have said, the position of the pyramids doesn't exactly match the position of the 3 stars of Orion, which is strange because the Egyptians were very good at mirroring the constellations of the zodiac to the ground in the form of pyramids and stone monuments. Using computer analysis, researchers were able to conclude that the position of the pyramids doesn't match the position of the 3 stars of Orion in 2500 BC when the pyramids were supposedly built. However, the position of the pyramids does match the position of the 3 stars of Orion in the year 10,500 BC, 8,000 years before the pyramids were thought to have been built. So were the pyramids actually built 13,000 years ago, or was this a geodetic error done by the pyramid builders in 2500 BC. It is very hard to believe that this could have been an error, considering that the position of the pyramids isn't the only structure that aligns perfectly with the constellation of Orion in the year 10,500 BC. This brings us to reason number 2, the celestial alignment of the Sphinx with the constellation of Leo. The Sphinx, the famous lion human hybrid statue in the Giza necropolis, was built as an earthly representation of the constellation of Leo, or the constellation of the lion. However, at the time the Sphinx was supposedly being built in the year 2500 BC, there was zero astronomical significance to its position with the constellation of Leo, which doesn't make sense considering that they built the statue as an astronomically significant monument representing Leo. Let me explain. Looking at a satellite image of the Sphinx, one could easily observe that it faces the east. The reason why the Egyptians positioned the Sphinx to face east is because that's where the sun rises. But why did they face it east, since the Sphinx has no religious connection with the god Ra, or the god of the sun? Contemporary scholars like Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval have, for decades, argued that the Sphinx could have only been built in the year 10,500 BC because around that epoch, on the spring equinox, which for those of you who don't know is one of the 2 days of the year with equal length of day and night, on the spring equinox around the year 10,500 at dawn, the sun would have housed the constellation of Leo. On the spring equinox of the year 2500 BC at dawn, around the time the Sphinx was supposedly built by Khafre, the sun would have housed the constellation of Taurus, otherwise known as the constellation of the Bull. The constellations of the night sky, as I have mentioned, shift by 1 degree every 72 years. And because of this shift, the constellation which appears above the sun at dawn on the spring equinox changes every 2,160 years. The only time in history the Sphinx appears to have astronomical significance to the constellation of Leo is in the year 10,500 BC on the spring equinox, when the sun would have risen directly below the constellation of Leo, and that is also the only period in history when the position of the 3 pyramids would have accurately mirrored the position of the 3 bright stars of Orion. The third reason to why the Giza necropolis is far older than we think is because of water erosion at the base of the Sphinx. Now, it doesn't take much brain power to realize that the Sahara is a very dry place. Egypt receives 2 millimeters of rain every year, and the climate of the country has been the same for over 4,000 years. So why is there water erosion at the base of the Sphinx even though Egypt receives little to no rain? Let's first take into consideration that the last time Egypt saw storms capable of causing such erosion was in the Holocene wet phase, which lasted 3,000 years from 7,000 BC to 4,000 BC. Before that, however, Egypt saw another upsurge in rainfall around 10,500 BC following the end of the Ice Age and the melting of the polar ice caps. 10,000 BC is, as I have mentioned, the only period in recent history the Sphinx faces the constellation of Leo on the spring equinox, and it is also the only period in recent history the 3 pyramids perfectly mirror the 3 big stars in the constellation of Orion. Maybe, just maybe, the erosion at the base of the Sphinx was caused by the monsoons following the end of the last ice age. A famous argument against this, which is popular in the Orthodox archaeological community, is that the erosion was not caused by rain, but was caused by wind storms. This is impossible considering that wind erosion creates horizontal grooves, not vertical grooves. Rain falls down, sand blows horizontally. Vertical erosion couldn't have been caused by sand. This is a well-known geological fact. You also have to take into consideration that for nearly 2,000 years, the Sphinx was completely covered by sand from its neck to its base. This happened because the entire structure is carved into limestone bedrock, so it sits inside a ditch. With that being said, the likelihood that the erosion was caused by desert storms is very low, considering that it was never exposed to wind long enough for vertical erosion to impossibly develop. So here you go, 3 reasons why I think the Sphinx and the pyramids are much older than we think. I really enjoy talking about all this, and if you guys want to learn more about the mystery of the pyramids and the Sphinx, I recommend reading Graham Hancock's works. They're right here. Please like, subscribe, and share. Peace.